Let's take a look at some information charts on Curve Finance today for BraveNewCoin. So Curve is a DEX AMM with a non-traditional tri-pools and assets that do not have volatility for the most part. Most of these pairs, not all of them, but most of them are non-volatile assets just on different chains or different slices of the same orange, such as RenBTC, WrappedBTC, DAI USDC, USDT. Some of these are volatile assets. Tether, BTC, ETH. Stuff like this actually has a use case because when you're trading all these different pairs, all these different AMMs, there are times when you need to go between DAI USDC and USDT, which is why this exists. Now, right off the bat, to me, the Curve rewards are too high. Now, one commenter last video I did on Curve said, I don't understand the fundamentals at all. That may be true, but for the most part, these Curve rewards are probably keeping price down. I also don't see the TVL at 12 billion. I don't know what I'm missing here. Maybe it's in some DAO or some other product on Curve, but reported TVL across everything is 13.6 billion, 12 billion of that is on ETH. I'll take a look at that in a second, but I don't know where that number comes from, so I must be missing something here. I don't know what's going on, but clearly DeFi Llama and the bank are correct because they're both reporting similar numbers. So there's TVL that's elsewhere that isn't here. They also recently reduced Curve emissions. Again, you couldn't see that on a price chart. I'll get to that when I talk about that. So regardless of what fundamentals are, regardless of what these LP highly convoluted schemes are, like, it doesn't matter to me in the near term. I'm just trading the chart anyway. So, if you're a long-term Curve holder, you don't care what I have to say anyway. And if you're a trader, you don't care what the 1-year lockup rewards are. For the most part, you're watching the price chart. So Curve is a great service. I don't know about Curve, the token, in the short term. If emissions do go down eventually to a reasonable degree and supply picks up, then yeah, or demand picks up, then yeah, price is going to do well. That's my little Curve spiel. We'll take a look at the normal stuff, MIM on here. It seems as though they try to do different stuff, new stuff. They're adding stuff all the time. So very interesting in that regard. They're innovating quickly. If we look at the DEX volumes by month, Curve in the maroon here, you could probably say it's growing slowly. Its best month was certainly May, along with everything else. And for the most part, you don't expect massive volume on something like Curve. I think switching in between like assets isn't necessarily something a lot of people do. I mean, I do it on Enzyme every once in a while, but most DEX trading that people do isn't the Curve type stuff. It's mostly the traditional ETH for USDT, USDT for BTC, that sort of thing. Or, ETH for BTC, whatever it is. But it's usually not like assets, which is probably why Curve's volume isn't as high as it otherwise would be. I don't know why this is today. Probably incentives, mining incentives, liquidity incentives. I don't know. Between Curve, Sushi, and 1inch, they've risen mightily over the past, couple days. And UniSwap volume overall is coming down comparatively, but Curve is up there today at 9% of the volume. And again, Curve on any given day, you're not going to miss it if it's gone, but it's important that it's there as a actual use case. Now, Curve has a reported 13.6 TVL billion across 4 chains. It's funny, I just noticed Sushi was the ultimate big tent, just every chain that is possible, which is good. I mean, good for them. As long as there's no additional security risks, which of course there are because it's an additional attack surface, but for them, that's great. How are you going to out-innovate Uni? You're going to go multi-chain. Perfect. How's Curve going to out-innovate other stuff? They're going to go multi-chain, right? They don't care at the end of the day. Unless you're an ETH maximalist, you don't care whatsoever where your trades get routed. All I want is the quickest, cheapest, most secure on-chain trading experience. I could care less where it goes through. ETH has been prohibitively expensive for a lot of people recently, again, and that's going to push volumes on other chains. And if you look at TVL just on ETH at all-time highs here at 12.47 billion, trading volume is kind of flat. If we zoom in a little bit, still flat. So it hovers around 200 million on an even day. Like I said, nothing too crazy there. users falling off, which makes sense if price of transacting on ETH is too high. Fewer and fewer people are going to do transactions. You know, like me, an enzyme. I'm not going to add 15 grand to a vault if it costs $300 to do that, and the yields are sub 5%, right? It's just going to sit in the wallet in a non-yielding fashion. Users also trending down. Never really had too many users on a daily basis, 250 on average, I'd say. But that's been trending lower recently, probably because of fees. XDAI TVL was rising and falling. Polygon TVL rising and falling. My guess is these were rising and falling because of liquidity incentives. And Phantom TVL all-time high, my guess is because there's a liquidity incentive there. Usually it's that simple. It's not like there's some like massive new paradigm here on some other chain. There's usually just incentives to push people there, or in Curve's case, it may be one of the first to be on Phantom, the chain. So finally, people are using it for the first time, basically, on that chain. If we look at the ETH transaction counts and average transaction values, transaction counts are basically flat, basically have been flat since September 2020. Big uptick in May, June, but other than that, nothing too crazy here. Average transaction value is just kind of mirroring price up and down. Active addresses also flat on ETH, and NVT kind of ranging widely, but lower lately. Lower is what you want to see for NVT, inverse metric of economic utility relative to market cap. But if you're bullish on the speculative potential of Curve, you'd want to see active addresses rising, you'd want to see transactions rising. MVRV, which is another NVT-like metric measuring market cap against on-chain activity, for most coins this caps out at 2. So if we zoom in a little bit, after the initial release of the token, we capped out on MVRV February 1st at 1.84, and it's just kind of cruised at price level up there. And then the lows have been sub 0.9. So 0.9 or lower is basically a buy, and anything above 1.8, 1.7 has been a sell for Curve specifically on MVRV. And I was bullish this actually from February to May. It looked like an ascending triangle. MVRV kind of backs me up here on that now that I look at this, but I don't know if this represents a type of divergence where you're getting higher highs in price, lower highs, or lower highs in MVRV. Just something to pay attention to in the periphery. If price is spiking hard, what does MVRV look like? If we're trending at a specific level for a long period of time, what does MVRV look like? Right now it's sub 1, around 0.9. So if 0.9 is truly a buy level, then MVRV is telling you this is a good buy area. If we look at market cap over annualized revenue, which is the PE ratio equivalent for the legacy people, Curve sits in the middle of the pack here at 23. I've tracked these over the past few months, and some of these revenues are supply side, some of them are protocol side like Maker, but in general you want to be buying things that are more on the left side of this graph than the right side. So to see Curve's PE ratios spiking meant that fees collected, annualized revenue, was probably declining as market cap was flat or rising. So this isn't anything that's going to prevent me from trading anything specifically. But I'm going to look at this and say, okay, Maker is what it's at right now. Maybe trim some of that, add to other positions that are relatively lower. Flipping gears to technicals. None of the technicals for Curve look particularly exciting, but the 12-hour cloud has been bullish for the past few days now, since early August. So although this doesn't look like much, it has the potential for bullish continuation, I'd assume, to 350, 360 at a bare minimum. What you don't want to see if you're bullish is this slide below the cloud again. And on the daily, it's working on that edge to edge to 280, 310. So depending on what you're looking for and if you know what you're looking at, you're using the single settings on the daily or the doubled settings on the 12-hour. Basically the same thing, but I look at both just to give me an idea. I like the daily doubled because it gives me the entire trade, entry, exit, stop loss down here. On the singled or 12-hour doubled, it gives me the entry, but it doesn't necessarily give me the exit. Stop loss is always below the cloud, but I like it because it's on the daily, it's stupid simple. On the 5200, we're about to cross bullish, which is another reason why maybe the 12-hour will actually move up here rather than curve down, no pun intended. But this does look like it's going to cross bullish here. And the W or whatever this was, target is between 260, 290. So these aren't like massive trades by any means to the upside. And like I already mentioned, the curve supply is probably what's keeping this down, if I had to guess. Now, this didn't even move like the rest of DeFi did in January. It had a big move relative probably to its market cap, but relative to price, it wasn't a very big move compared to some of this other stuff. So until it proves that it can actually like do explosive things in an explosive way, you can't just assume that this thing's going to go to 10, right? It's probably going to go to 290 and hover around 350 for a long time until demand catches up, if it does. But I wouldn't expect massive upsides on this anytime soon, but the trend does look pretty good. And something else to look at, this is Curve BTC on the 12-hour. And I was looking at this thinking, what do I even say? It's a bunch of nothing sideways. You can look at Bollinger Bands here, which are really good. But something else you can look at as well is pivots. So these are monthly pivots. And you'll notice these get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And typically how this works, just like Bollinger Bands, when volatility contracts, pivots contract because they're based on math of highs and lows of the previous month. And then you typically see, not always, but eventually you're going to see pivot expansion here as volatility picks up. So I don't think this leans one way or the other, bullish or bearish. VPVR says it's smack dab in the middle of everything since October. I don't even know if it's fair to say it's due for a move, but volatility is basically zero against BTC. So again, something to watch in the periphery if you're trading the USD pair. And against ETH, it's just pushing all-time lows. It's getting smacked down by the 50 period moving average on the daily every chance it gets. So again, if this flips the 50 on curve ETH, then maybe something's going on here, right? Maybe people are rotating into this from other stuff. If this forms a 5200 bull cross, that's another big sign that things are changing. Not yet showing signs of bullish divergence here on the bottom. So this probably just keeps grinding lower and lower and lower and lower. People capitulate out, people forget about it, whatever. We get a bull div and then eventually something happens, but this thing probably doesn't reverse anytime soon. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techemy Capital on Enzyme.finance, non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocation, all the trades I make, all the fun yield plays I'm in. We do hold Curve here. I'm currently getting interest on that through Aave, and the trades are in the trades tab down below. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.